What's going on, everybody? This is MDENT313, and I'm back at y'all with another one. Listen, I know I'm late on this one, but I just now saw Davonta Adams on Club Shay Shay, and man, that interview was absolutely exciting. Man, that dude Davonta Adams, he seemed like a good dude. Very intelligent, very well spoken. We already know he's a phenomenal football player. Probably by the end of his career, he's going to go down as one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play the game. But what I want to talk about, man, it was so much stuff in there. What I want to talk about is, his run with the Green Bay Packers. And he said some things in there where he talked about how a lot of people think when you miss the playoffs, is more painful. He said it was more painful, with those great teams, those 13-3 Green Bay Packers, those 12-4, and every time they would get that close, whether they would get to the NFC Championship or the divisional rounds, and they kept getting put out and never making it to the big dance. He talked about how that hurt way more than not making the playoffs, because he didn't make the playoffs with the Oakland Raiders, right? And he also talked about what a phenomenal relationship he had with Aaron Rodgers and how much of a difference it makes when you have an elite level quarterback as opposed to having, a regular, decent, mediocre quarterback, if you will. He didn't say the word mediocre, but I'm going to say it. And he was talking about how on certain routes, him and Aaron had so much chemistry where he could run a 10-yard, 5-yard, 15, 20-yard curl, and their chemistry was so on point that he could run the route and get so many yards after the catch because of how dynamic of a quarterback that Aaron Rodgers was, and how both these guys, they're both phenomenal without each other, but how much better they are with each other, right? And, he also talked about how when it was time for him to get his contract extension, the Green Bay Packers, they didn't want to give him that extension, even coming off these great, seasons or whatever. He also talked about how they franchise tagged him, so he had to play, he had to play up under the franchise tag. They came back with a laughable offer, and he said, listen, it's a lot of guys. He said he wasn't gonna name any names. He didn't. That under those same conditions, they would have kind of just mailed it in. They wouldn't have been going across the middle. But he still played. He gave it his all. Still put up great numbers. And then, after that last heartbreak where they lost to, who was it? Was it the Rams? It might have been the Rams, where they ended up losing. He said it was extremely cold out there, and how Green Bay, they used to playing in the cold weather, and they got absolutely dominated. And he was devastated. He said a combination of that, the quality of life for his family, as well as, the heartbreak of losing. And he said sometimes in life, it just isn't meant to be, right? Sometimes you may have a good thing, but you're not gonna win a championship there. Sometimes it's best for both parties to, go their own way. I thought that was a phenomenal point. I thought he was 1,000% correct. Shannon Sharp asked him about Jordan Love and how was it? Did you get a chance to see him a lot in practice? He said he didn't get a chance to really work with Jordan Love a lot, but he gave Jordan Love a lot of credit. Talked about how well he high point the ball, how cool and calm under pressure he was. But he said a lot of times with the first team, you don't get an opportunity often to play with the guys on the second and third team and, really practice with them a lot. And another thing that caught my eye about this interview was moving over to him being an Oakland Raider when he got to talking about Josh McDaniels' situation, head coaching or whatever. And he was explaining to us, and I like it because as a fan of football, everybody know that football and boxing are my 1A and 1B. Sometimes it's football, sometimes it's boxing. Where he talked about how complex Josh McDaniels' system was, and he said he had to go to Josh McDaniels, and he said, yeah, you and I or some of the other players who went to Yale or Harvard or wherever, or who just understand the system, we may get it, but sometimes you're gonna have to install things and install a system that's less complex for other players. He talked about how it don't matter how you get the result, as long as you get the result that you're looking for. And I thought that was a phenomenal point. He said he was a big advocate for getting Josh McDaniels over there, and talked about what a great guy he is, what a phenomenal coach he is. But sometimes you can't always just say, I'm gonna put this system in place, and these guys are gonna have to learn my system. Sometimes you have to adapt to the personnel that you have. He said sometimes you don't need to overhaul your personnel. Sometimes you have the right personnel, but you have to know how to motivate and inspire and install a system fitted for your particular personnel that you have. And I thought that was 1000% correct. He enjoyed playing for former linebacker Antonio Pierce. He talked about what a great coach he is. He also talked about Jordan Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. And that, he said, when he talked about specifically, not Aiden Connell, but what's the other, Jordan Minshew, because Shannon said, what you think about Jordan Minshew? He's like, it's kind of really hard to say when you're not in the game. A lot of times you say a lot of these things have to be assessed properly when you're in real time during the game. It's kind of a lot easier to assess certain things in practice, but until you're doing it in real time under the bright lights, certain things you can't assess. He talked about how Aiden Connell was always trying to get better, how these guys were in the hot tub, and Aiden O'Connell was asking him, man, how do you run your route so well, and how do you know this, and how do you know that? And he went down in detail how when he's running routes, how cerebral you have to be, because the cornerbacks are so good, and how you have to strategically get to your spots and bait the corner. And sometimes you have to play in their hip, out their hip, how you break out and things of that nature. Him and Aiden O'Connell seem like they have a phenomenal relationship. He also talked about growing up in a house with his grandmother, and his grandmother had 9 people staying there, so he didn't have his own bed. He had to sleep on the couch. And he talked about how great his parents were, even though they got divorced and things of that nature, and how they were strict and they were disciplinarians, and how them being strict on him and being tough on him as far as his education is concerned, how that made him a much better person. Because we all may do things we shouldn't do, but I will admit, being disciplined, if you got parents who discipline you, you will have a limit, or at least think about the things that you're going to do before you do them, right? He talked about being a basketball star when he was younger, how he really wanted to play in the NBA. He didn't really want to play football because in the 5th grade he ended up breaking his arm, and then he broke his arm again in the 8th grade. And he showed Shannon he did like this with his arms. I don't understand because I'm not an athlete and I never broken any bones, but I guess he broke his growth plate in his arm, so one arm is a lot longer than the other arm. And when he was in the 8th grade, when he was in the 5th grade, he didn't want to play football anymore because of that injury. But he got to his junior year of high school and caught a ball, and ever since that, it's been history. He talked about his career at Fresno State, how he thoroughly enjoyed playing with Derrick Cark, how he put up great numbers. He talked about his wide receiver coach when he was at Fresno State, how great he was and how instrumental he was at teaching him the art of route running and mastering the art of running every single route and breaking down a route tree. And he said, and it went from that to talking about in the NFL, right? How when you are a rookie coming in, you can kind of get any coach because you believe any coach, but when you have experience and real-time experience, how certain things that coaches do, you can tell as a player that coach don't know what he's doing. He gave a lot of props to his former wide receiver coach in Fresno State, and how he's now the wide receiver coach for the New Orleans Saints. So I look forward to Chris Olave having a great season, having a guy like that teach him run routes like he taught Davonta Adams. He talked about how, he was upset that the Oakland Raiders got rid of Derrick Carr, and Derrick Carr was a big part of what made him want to come to Oakland in the first place, on top of him being from there and being a Oakland Raiders fan. But Derrick Carr, because Derrick Carr and Davonta Adams had a great 2-year run at Fresno State together, and things of that nature, and how him and Derrick Carr, as well as him and Aaron Rodgers, still have a close relationship to this day. He also named the 8 receivers who was picked ahead of him, because I didn't realize Davonta Adams was picked in the 2nd round. And some of those guys he still hold a great friendship and great relationship to this day. But I'm not going to go on and on. That interview was phenomenal, man. I want to give a shout out to Club Shay Shay. Man, Shannon Sharp, man, you're doing your thing. You're one of the best guys when it comes to the art of interviewing. You have phenomenal production, great camera, great video quality. And every interview seems to get better and better. But I'm disappointed in myself as a football fan for missing this interview. This interview happened over a month. Well, it happened a month ago, according to YouTube. Man, if you guys get an opportunity, if you ever hear this video, please go over there and check the interview out. And I would like to see more of these NFL guys come over and do interviews with guys like Shannon Sharp and whoever, Ryan Clark. I like Ryan Clark's show as well. And man, great interview. Let me know what you think in the comment section, man. Like, share, and subscribe.